So artists then need to modify their art's immune system in order to accommodate these new viruses. You can't, there you see already a very different way of looking at art study. It's not this, you should have almost used the blackboard, you know, the old system in the 1800s where you had your point, your goal, you're a student, you're beginning, you're here. The tutor knows and perhaps is there. And then there's a straight line to get there. And however good you are, it depends where you are on the straight line. But this is not that. In the second, I don't know, do you know these different forms? The second one is where you have the same goal, the same beginning, and you actually don't know how to get there. So you can wander like this, but you eventually still end up in the same point. Which is all well and good, but the third one, of course, is that you do something. This is far more like this. You do something and you find yourself here. And you don't know why on earth you're there. And then you begin to trace back and discuss with people and look, and eventually you find out why you're there. This is when the virus can come in. If you resist the virus, says this guy, your work becomes, if you like, it's outside, it's not interesting, and it's irrelevant. Art academies are good places to, how to say, to make you stronger, so you can deal with these viruses. The viruses are not going to kill you if you're in art college or in art academies. Another point here mentioned is, it's a by the way point about how to take in the virus, but still the same thing applies, sadly perhaps, that good art, you know, good people's art or sincere art is not necessarily so exciting. It's always been a big issue for me. I've often wondered why this is, but this is mentioned by Malevich. Also, I want to just mention one artist who is insincere according to himself. You may well know the Belgian artist Groys. He actually claims that he's sincere. Okay. The other guy I want to introduce is Boris Groys. And very many of these ideas come from one of his lectures, not that long ago. Groys claims that art after the beginning of the 1900s, after the idea of the found object of Duchamp, anything goes. So, can art study also open up for anything? Could anything go within an art study? This is an interesting question. It makes these art study areas or establishments fora for critique and for change. So it's no longer the idea of, here you are, you need to learn this, then this, then this, then this, but it becomes simply, it becomes an arena where you have discussions and where you find your way in some kind of a maze, okay? And you experiment. Okay. Here we reach this point where which art study are we talking about? Where I went, they changed quite rapidly. I ended up at the Royal College of Art in the 70s. And it was experimentation, totally. I remember coming to the masters, there was no teaching. There was nothing to be taught. at the beginning this was quite difficult for some students. One of them had a mental breakdown, really quite severe. And I remember it very well, that it was, well, just get on with it, you know, just do it. But just make sure that you're brilliant, that's all. It doesn't matter otherwise. You could say that the art academy of the university, up to that point, is an area, a secluded area, almost a little, in this sense, almost a little bit like a church or a monastery, where you are free from what's going on outside. You avoid, okay, you don't avoid all of it, of course not, you've still got to pay for a place to live, and there are lots of things you have to do, but up to a point you're given this free space, and this is important. So, Groys says that art study has no definite goal or method, has no agreement on content, and has no tradition. That would not be here, I presume. But in quite a few places in Britain, now in Norway too, you could say that's true. It's quite severe. You may know that there have been attempts to define art. You may be happy to know that there is no definition that actually works. So we're actually studying something that nobody can define. Mind you, if somebody knows of a definition, please tell me. So far I've never found one. The closest was Dickey's idea that art is part of the institution, art. In other words, if the institution says it's art, it's art. If the gallery owner says it's art, or a museum director and so on. But then again, that doesn't quite work, because how on earth did these places evolve? They evolved from art. So something is a bit strange there too, when it comes to the definition. And anyway, if you go back to about 18 something, go back further, was it art at all? But that's another discussion. No particular content that can be taught, or there's no tradition that can be given on to the new. The modernism that we now look at is nostalgia, much of it. We no longer care for the causes. It's a bit like Eisenstein, some of his earlier movies. Have you seen them still, or are they vanished? I mean, do no young people look at it? Does anybody really look at Eisenstein's films anymore? Some do, I guess. I remember very much, like Strike, you know, the Battleship, all these. I can remember, I mean, I loved them, and I remember reading about them in the then West, where they were saying they're absolutely marvelous works of art, if you like. The most, perhaps the best films ever made. But don't worry about the propaganda, you know, forget the propaganda. Just look at the way you got all the use of filming, you know, this way, and the panning out and the into it, you know. This is what it's all about form. I think that's absolute rubbish, personally. I don't think you can do that. I think you have to either take it all or none of it. But that's my opinion. So now, what we do is we actually, very often, we look back at modernism in a nostalgic way. We don't take in all of what it's about. We can look at a picture of the Black Square and just think, wow, it's quite cool, you know, it's quite nice, really. Well, it's not quite cool at all. It stands for a certain something. And I think either we accept all of that or else forget it. But this is, again, approaching a later thing. And I'd like to discuss it with you. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions. I have a little bit to say getting on towards the end about that. And it deals very much in the idea of depth and surface. Because in my opinion, the virus that I'm talking about doesn't like depth, but loves surface.